This is Burn This Book, a banned books book club where we, Nicole and Eden, read a banned or challenged book twice a month and discuss its meaning, impact, and censorship to make it more accessible for all readers. This week's book is Looking for Alaska by John Green, which was published in 2005. And joining us today is Theodore Wilkins, calling in from New York City. Theodore, could you tell us about yourself and your connection to this book?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, I'm Theodore. I'm a writer in New York. This book holds a very special place in my heart for very cringy reasons. It was a book that I picked up accidentally when I was 12 years old in middle school. Yeah, it was just one of those things where it just hit at exactly the right time. John Green in particular has kind of crept around in my life kind of ever since. He's always been kind of in the periphery, whether it be in his literature I read all the way through out kind of high school and all the way to like work he does now on kind of virtual online stuff. He kind of seems to be seeping around everywhere. So I was excited to be on the pod for this book in particular. So
thank you. Before we dive in too much, do you want to? Who wants to give a little recap of the book?
So the book is about this boy named Miles Halter. I think his last name is Miles. He is like really into the famous last words of people. So like right before someone dies, he's like obsessed with memorizing what they've said. So he has like a whole collection. His parents are like pretty supportive and lovely. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He's kind of an outsider. And so he convinces his parents to go to boarding school, and specifically a boarding school in Alabama that his dad had gone to. He goes to the boarding school and his whole life changes because there he meets a ragtag gang of fun people. He falls in love with this girl named Alaska. It's quite a coming of age story where he really discovers who he is. He talks a lot about grief and death, just a lot about growing up and adolescence and what intimacy actually is and friendship and all of those things. What more is there? You guys might have ideas. So.
Burritos.
Oh yeah! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh.
Nasty cafeteria food from Florida.
And just full disclosure, none of us are from the South here in this trio, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're from the West.
I'm from Arizona 85205. I don't remember my old zip code. I've been gone long enough. I haunt the streets, the 480.
Yeah,
as it's
you haunt the streets.
Called. Yeah.
Yeah, you had your own. What was it? Burritos or whatever.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, in Arizona, the big one is what is it, like carne asada fries is probably the nasty high school food I ate a lot of. I mean, nasty. It was delicious.
Amazing.
I mean, it's a carne asada.
Yeah, that does sound great.
Yeah,
I feel like everybody has that like idealized version of a food that they just simply cannot eat anymore without feeling terrible for a week. That you loved when you were 15, 16, whatever.
Mm-hmm. I can't eat those
like
anymore.
A burrito, right? Like, isn't a chimichanga a burrito?
Is that what it is?
That's what I thought it was. And I was like, John Green, this is my biggest issue with the book. John Green, call a chimichanga a chimichanga.
Call a spade. What's going on?
Why are you making up new food?
That makes more sense now. I was like trying to imagine. It's like that. I don't know what I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah.
Well, it's an uncomfortable word to say as well. I didn't for so long. It was like bufrito. Like we could. We're spending maybe too much time on this.
But another content explanation is that's the main food at the cafeteria in the boarding school, and they all love it, and it's like a part of their youth culture is making it for Burrito Day, and it sounds so gross. They save their burritos. There's a lot of burrito talk in this book. We've only scratched the surface. So let's first talk, if it's okay, about the different themes of the book and just like what we got from it. So an important part is like, okay, let's just talk about Alaska. So this is where I found issue, and maybe you can help us, Theodore. Because Eden and I disclosed that we both did not like this book. It was kind of a slog for us.
Granted, we're also not the target audience.
That's true. We're not young adults.
We're not young adults. Yeah,
we're old adults now.
We are. We're approaching middle age. My goodness.
So Alaska, my issue with Alaska was, I was like, John Green, have you ever met a teenage girl? That was my problem, was that she felt too manic pixie dream girl for me. And it was almost like, she wasn't annoying, but the way that she was written was so annoying to me. Where also I was like, do you know about depression? It felt like she was written really quickly just to serve as a device plot, which is fine. But he claimed, but the way that people talk about it was like, no, Alaska was so real for me. So I just had a lot of issues with that, where I just couldn't get through. And the nicknames like Pudge, and and
Pudge and the Colonel.
Yeah, Miles gets a nickname called Pudge because he's so skinny, so it's like ironic. And he moves in with this guy named the Colonel who grew up in a lot of poverty, and he's got like a Southern accent. He's like really supposed to be quite a Southern archetype. And he's his roommate, and he's very loving and great. But they only call him the Colonel, and it's just like very serious on the nicknames. So the Alaska bit was like, I think, my hardest part. I think if she had been written differently, I would have liked it more. I don't know. What was when you first read the book, how did you feel about Alaska? Like, did you feel any of those things, or was it just like, because I don't know why you'd need to be dissecting her the way I did.
Yeah. Well, I think it's worth noting too that like the term, manic pixie dream girl comes from a critic named Nathan Rabin, I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
About a film that came out the same year that this book was published.
What?
And so Manic Pixie Dream Girl comes from Cameron Crowe's Elizabethtown, 2005, yes. I think.
Yes.
And then the term gets coined a couple years later, and it's very much so like John Green is writing about an archetype that doesn't exist for him yet, but like he's creating in real time. I totally agree that, and like Alaska fits a certain archetype and is a device within the piece. Like, I think even though she, tries to be this subversive, strong feminist, within the text, it's like it's not okay in the sense that it's like only used to foil the boys and what the boys already think of her.
Yeah.
I don't think Alaska is a perfect character. And on that note, I really feel that the age of this book kind of creeping as I was reading it. It's like, wow, this is, this already is almost, 20 years old, and it reads like it, and it has characters that kind of feel like it.
Yeah, that's so true. 2005, that puts it into perspective for sure.
That does.
Why didn't I put that in? Like, that it came out the same, like a year after the OC. Everything in my life is marked before the OC to after the OC, the TV show.
Oh,
yeah, so,
okay.
So,
yeah.
The OC came out in 2004, so this is 2005. So yeah, so I guess when I put it in that perspective, yeah, because he's also kind of an Adam Brody character too, a Seth Cohen.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for It's not an OC
recontextualizing that in terms of the OC. In terms of
a language we understand.
Vital. Yeah, definitely.
But that is interesting. Well, they call it they jokingly call it millennial math because for some reason, looking at the 2005s, we're like, oh, that wasn't that long ago. But actually, as Theodore pointed out, it's almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's totally insane. And I don't know. I found it too. It's all very colored, of course. I think this is one of the bigger questions about the book. Maybe it has a lot to do with Alaska too. Is like, how do we, deal with this? I don't want to call him an unreliable narrator, right? But this is a teenage boy's voice through and through and through and through, dealing with the teenage boy problems and feeling teenage boy feelings about this girl. And I think that, his inability to, I think, fully see Alaska's humanity and kind of her image and self beyond you know, femaleness of
Mhm.
her
Yeah.
is both problematic of his perspective, and then yes, we can say it is a problematic aspect of the book though as well. I think there are much better characterizations. um I buy every critique of Alaska essentially
Yeah.
and how she was
Uh-huh.
written. Even if I think it can also be like, I can see why I liked it and identified with it when I was 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that when you're 12, at least like I was, I think I had very simplistic understandings of how romance worked, and patriarchal understandings of how romance worked, and how I operate or should operate in,
Yeah.
situations, relationships, whatever it may be.
Well, it makes me
Mhm.
think, like, I saw Garden State around that same time, and that movie, she's very manic pixie dream girl energy for sure, Natalie Portman in that movie. But for like freshman year of high school, Nicole, I was like, I'm gonna be her.
Mm.
So like we still like it captures that immature understanding of self, of like gender dynamics, and just like what you were talking about, Theodore. I love that you brought up the feminism bit though. So Alaska, she'll have like a snarky remark back to the guys, the old gang, and it'll always have like a feminist twist to it. And you can feel the guys just kind of like rolling their eyes about it. Like it's just like this funny part of her. Um,
Mhm.
and I was always like, what is John Green's point? Is he trying to create multidimensionality with her? Is he trying to make her an intellectual? Like, why is he trying to do that? And I don't know if it's important for us to understand why he added that to her. But I did think that the reaction was funny because, like, I don't know. I lived in the South for only 8 months in Louisiana, and yeah, feminism is a joke to a lot of the people I was friends with. So I think that reaction is very real, and I think especially in 2005, when when girls would talk about feminism, I feel like if you're really hot, you got away with it. And Alaska was a hot feminist gal, so she got away with it. So I think, like, in the lens of 2005, it all makes so much more sense. You just healed me, and like the nicknames.
Mhm.
Do you guys mind if we talk about one of the big plot points of the book?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Go for
So in the book, Alaska ends up dying in a car accident. It is contested that it might have been a suicide, or it may have been an accident because she was drunk, but like no one can really figure out what exactly happened. And so the last bit of the book is Miles and all of his friends mourning the loss of their friend and trying to figure out how to cope with it. And also you see a lot of their egos getting involved, where everyone feels like they loved Alaska, so they deserve to be mourning more. I thought that was so well done because Miles made her death all about him more than about her. And I thought that was so high school, and everyone did. And the Colonel was the only one who was mature enough to be like, no, we're all sad. You need to chill out. And also Miles held on to this idea that he was possibly going to have a sexual experience with Alaska. And that's like how he justified his closeness with her, which is a false intimacy, So Miles says this, so John Green did this really excellent idea of just showing ego, complicated physical intimacy, and mourning all in the same little bucket of confusion. And it was just like, it was really well done. And I was just so frustrated the whole time. Like, Miles, you suck. You just need to sit and chill and be a friend to your friends who've known her way longer than you. I was so frustrated, but I thought that was well done in every way, that part.
Yeah, no, totally. And like kind of on that, on that train of thought, like what I thought was probably the most brilliant part about the book, rereading it, kind of, dissecting the text, was seeing how kind of sex and sexuality develops in tandem with kind of a mature understanding of death. Like, Miles does this thing where he's always objectifying constantly. There's throughout I wrote in the book, every instance where there was physical objectification, I put PO next to it. And like the beginning and in the before section, you have two things. You have a really immaterial understanding of death. He only views death through this lens of last words and kind of through this imaginary kind of speculative lens almost, because he in a way, that obsession is almost fictionalizing the immediacy of what's about to come. And it's through the body that Pudge kind of starts to understand like the intensity and the seriousness of life itself, so his, gripes with Alaska dying, or like his intense scenes with Alaska dying, they all have to do with, the blood, that's running down her nose, and there's this scene where he's dreaming, and Alaska comes back naked and starts falling on him, but then she's like dying on him, and there's this weird tension where like the sex is almost vital to this book. It's been so important to this book because it's what makes Miles, I think, come to his conclusions about like again like the importance of life. And I really thought that was very clever, and maybe something that it's the reason why I think this book gets banned so frequently, is probably having to do with that sex. But to me, it's like the most important aspect of like getting his point across, which is like that we live, like life happens and then we die.
The intersection of the whole everything about the body and his objectification. And I would even argue at the beginning until the very end, he's like, if we're going to use the Manic Pixie Dream Girl archetype, let's use the other version of it, which was a term coined in the book, The 2000s Made Me Gay, is the, oh no, Eden, what is it? The chatter boy,
oh yeah, like the Seth Cohens.
Yes, it's always about the OC Theodore. He's got a lot to say, and he fixates on these like very romanticized and fantastical things about history and life, and he knows all the facts. He's got them memorized, and he'll share them, and he has like, he's got a hot take for everything. Like at the beginning of the book, he had his mom threw him a party before he left for his boarding school, and he has all these hot takes about like the thespian couple that comes to the party. He is the most judgy boy in the world, where he's like, I'd rather be dead than have them in my house. And it's like, oh my gosh.
He's a total Holden Caulfield.
Yeah. Yes, totally. And he's just like, nothing is good enough for him. But and then you see, his ego is met.
He asks to be sent to boarding school because he's like, I'm not getting enough out of life, Yeah.
And he's looking, what was this phrase? He's looking for the great, the great unknown, the great perhaps.
Yep, the great perhaps.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I do think that, like, going back to that Elizabethtown vibe, I really think Miles views himself as in that universe of these like really extraordinary youths who just deserve the world and who are giving so much. Just so much.
I found it. It's Banter Boy.
A Banter Boy.
That's Chatter Boy, Banter Boy. Like those are pretty similar, actually.
Yeah, the Banter Boy.
Banter Boy.
Yeah, like Jim from The Office is considered a banter boy because he's always got something good to say. He's always looking for something outside of himself to fulfill himself. He like is aware that his space in it right now is not enough. He's better than where he is, and I think Miles is definitely an example of the banter boy. Whereas the Colonel is like so grateful to be where he is at the boarding school, what he's doing, aware that his friends are his friends. He's got boundaries with them.
Yeah.
Well, he also comes from poverty too. I think like Miles definitely is coming from a place of privilege.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that his parents are like, okay, yeah, we'll send you to boarding school.
Yeah, 100%. He's somebody who doesn't know the severity of his own life. Like he sees himself as a fictional character within his own existence. And I think that continues all the way through until maybe he starts to finally process what death actually is. Maybe he doesn't even get there entirely, by the end of the novel. I think that, I think it's a great observation though. Like Miles is a pretty, he's not totally aware of himself. and again, like I think as a lot of teenagers
Yeah, as we
are
all,
not,
yeah.
yeah, and as we
Yeah.
all are not, yeah, maybe this is the thing that we get the perspective of this person who I don't think we're supposed to like very much, um, and that's honestly why I make the Holden Caulfield. I think I know. Well, actually, I know Catcher in the Rye
Yeah.
is like John Green's like one of his favorite books of all time, and it reads
Yeah.
so much in this novel.
And Perks of Being a Wallflower. While I was reading it, I was like, this is very Perks of Being a Wallflower. Because have you read that, Theodore? Yeah. So Sam, to help Eden out, Sam, the Emma Watson of the book.
The Emma Watson of the book.
When we were talking about that book, Eden just kept bringing up the movie. Actors, and I was like, no,
so Paul
Eden.
Rudd, and like,
no, Eden. Yeah, when Logan Lerman was going through this. But
a better book if they were actually like the actors.
Yeah.
But if they were just randomly named,
Emma Watson. I can't even think of anyone else. But Sam is very much the Alaska of this situation, and it's very much like that same idea of Miles being dropped into this really tight friend group who have their own culture and their own way of interacting. And then Sam's brother, I don't remember his name from the book, but
Ezra Miller.
Ezra Miller is it's definitely like the Colonel, where there's troubles and stuff like that, but they also give like the outside perspective and that like grounding experience for the protagonist. So I was, and that book is also highly influenced by Catcher in the Rye. And so I think it is fun to see these different
like iterations.
Like, thank you. Yeah. Of The Catcher in the Rye. What did you guys think about how it was written? Like the chapters leading up are like 15 days before to her death. And then after her death, it's like 12 days after. Like, how did you guys feel about that? Did you like that anticipation, that forced anticipation of something about to happen? Or did you, tell me. Because a lot of people are very critical about that from what I read on the internet. A lot of people were like really annoyed, but other people were like, that was brilliant. So there's just a lot of chit chat about how that was written.
I thought that like the times he does a few different things repeatedly, I think, kind of with the structure of the novel. First thing being the time, of course, which I thought was okay in a book where actually dates have a pretty important kind of meaning, and the passing of time has a pretty important meaning in the context of being in a school. Like the breaks are very important. I think it's like January 10th is when the mom dies, like all this kind of stuff. So I thought it was okay. And it also does this thing where, Pudge does a lot of list making, which I thought is very much so in like the, I don't know, tradition of like other American novelists, and kind of like points to, I think Pudge's own kind of fictionalizing of himself and this kind of way of portraying and seeing his own life in a weird way. But it's I thought it was pretty good in that regard. But I don't know. It is, you could definitely see this book being without the time stamping, and it would be perfectly fine. I found it kind of frustrating, though, if nothing else, like in the after section, things kind of fall off for me. Kind of narratively, I feel like there's too much kind of the same thing going on and on and on. There's very few kind of moments of true release, I think. One of them being when he's, in the forest and he's freaking out. And then what I thought was, probably the best part is when they kind of drive through the same place that Alaska died. But other than that, I didn't really care so much about finding out why Alaska died in the ways that, well, for the reason Miles lists and, tells us why he cares so much about it.
Well, it felt like it was impossible to find out why. So it was like kind of, it felt, and maybe that was adult brain reading it, being like, this is futile. You just need to learn how to cope with it. Maybe the high school Nicole would have been like, you need to figure, like, this is a mystery we can solve. This is us being productive. I wish I'd read this in high school so I could step back into that. But no, I agree with you. I felt like the writing I felt like John Green knew what he wanted, but there was, the tension just remained. Like there was no release the way you described. Like at least in Perks, Charlie goes to the hospital, gets help, And there's a lot of peace, and Charlie has all these realizations and is just very aware of like, this is something I want to do with my whole life, but I know that it's complicated and people love me and I love people. And it's that, but like, I didn't really feel like we got that kind of come to Jesus moment.
Do you think that was intentional though, to like highlight the grief that like these high schoolers are going through? Like there is no closure for them because they don't know what happened. And so they are kind of just like spinning in circles and like, what the heck? Like, could I have prevented this? Like, maybe I should have done this. Maybe I should have done that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like that is definitely a part of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it. I mean, and maybe maybe I should be looking this more of a strength. Like that is part of the reading, is that there's kind of no finding out why death and how death. You know, it is a very frustrating experience what they're going through. I imagine there's not really good ways to write a narrative like a clean, you know, narrative line, you know, being good with it and, you know, or not being good with it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like the grieving that we do in high school, it never, I don't know. I think those moments really impacted because it was like the first time you had to challenge the idea that life is hopeless. You had to like actually figure out a way to keep moving forward in the dreary of high school, even after your friend died. And he does a good job of explaining it. It just never goes away. But I did still feel like I could have used a little bit more, like, I don't know, even some friendship with like a little bit more closure on his friendship with like the Colonel or Takumi. Or like anyone, just like a little bit more of him being like, I don't know. I just felt like it was unfinished for me. I was like, okay,
it's a short book. You could imagine it being fleshed out a lot more, you know? And actually on that note, I kind of feel like the ending specifically, like I find it happened all very quickly, him coming to this kind of forgiveness, you know, essay, what he gets to. Yeah, it could have gone for a lot longer. You know, both the before and the after, to be frank, as well. Like and I'm curious about that. How do you like his explanation of ending? You know, getting out of the labyrinth of suffering. Like, what is that good? Do we vibe with it? His forgiveness and, you know, I don't know.
I don't know. Like honestly. For me, it just felt unfinished. And maybe it was as good as it can be for someone who is banter boy-esque. Maybe him just coming to all those like thoughts and being able to see last words as not being like a fun hobby and as being like a reality check and a harsh one. And maybe that was all that he was capable of emotionally. I don't know. Let me keep thinking. What do you think, Eden? What did you feel about the ending?
I think I was also caught up in Alaska, but he did write this when he was 28 and it was his first book. So it could just be an error of first novel, just like, I don't know how to end this. I'll end it here, you know? But I don't know. Maybe I think this was his first book.
I did all the wrong research.
His first published book, as I know, yeah.
I know it was based off of true events because he himself was quite the Miles and begged his parents to go to boarding school, and he went to boarding school. But it was in Alabama. That's where I got confused. Sorry, this book is in Florida. But he went to his school in Alabama. And a lot of these experiences with the Colonel and all the pranks are from his experience in boarding school. And that helped me be like, oh, this is realistic. Because before I was like, these pranks. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
No, some things are really funny. Like the Max one had me like genuinely laughing.
Which one was the Max one?
Where they bring in the fake doctor on teenage sexuality.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty good.
That was really good. And the thing that got me too was like, would his dad have agreed to do that? But
that's so silly, right?
But also the dad may have, because he went to that boarding school, and I guess prank culture is a big part of that boarding school.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like, because the dad was very proud of his pranks. Oh my gosh. Okay,
these are like the ultimate teenagers. Like when you think about like what a teenager, like teenage life and like the teenage ideal, like this is everything that has been marketed about what is,
Yeah.
the rebellious young
Mhm.
adult.
Did your
Okay.
high schools have? We had senior pranks. Did your high schools have senior pranks?
Kind of.
We had to do pranks. I like took all the paper that was in the recycling bin, the big old recycling bin. I shredded it for like 7 hours and covered the entire cafeteria in snow.
That's incredible.
It
Theodore,
was my
you were
one man job.
Oh my gosh, you're so dedicated.
I was a little obsessed with it that night.
Yeah, we like people talk about the legendary senior pranks at my high school. Like they brought 3 pigs. I don't know where they got the pigs from.
Oh wow.
They brought 3 pigs and numbered them 1, 2, and 4, which is pretty clever.
That is like such a 1930s prank, honestly. Like, truly.
We did and then so the class before me, they all rollerbladed or scootered, like razor scootered to school, causing like massive traffic jams because they were going so slow.
Wow.
And then my class, Connecticut. My class, we just did like, someone got like cooking oil and poured it down the stairs. So like one staircase was just out of commission.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, that was, that one sounds pretty sad. It's like, oh, we're the messiest one. Like,
yeah. It's a smelly hallway.
Oh my gosh.
Sure.
Yeah.
I feel like my school was too lazy. In the past, there were a ton of senior pranks, but people got in really big trouble. I don't know. There's like, we didn't really do it to the extent. Like, I just feel like all those kids would have been expelled immediately.
We did get one little detail mixed up. So
go ahead.
It's from the high school was in Alabama.
It was in Alabama.
Yeah, he came from Florida.
From Florida. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well then, I've been right this whole time, guys. I'm a master of looking for Alaska.
Yeah, we know you love this book.
Yeah.
you can't hide it.
It's my favorite book. No. Honestly, though, this conversation is helping me like it a lot more. Though, I really do see like, oh, okay, this checks out. This is good.
Yeah. It's simply a flawed. It's a flawed novel. There's lots of like things to dig on, and I think that's what kind of sucks about John Green is that he gets a bit of an unfair rap. I think like his books aren't these awful things that are completely objectifying women and making teenagers seem this, I don't know, like you know what I mean. It's part of it, but there's also I think lots of really really great things in this book. There's something I picked up on immediately. For example, like he doesn't keep kids dumb, which I really like.
No.
And because when you're a kid reading something, you wanna feel like these teenagers, you know what I mean? And like I appreciate like that aspect. I appreciate that aspect of when I was a kid, and I liked it now as well. Thinking like, I want to like make teenagers have like real feelings, make them actually feel seen. And I thought that was really good.
Doing research for this episode, I came to appreciate John Green because I think I was one of the people who like gave him a bad rap. Granted, I've only read The Fault in Our Stars and now this one. But a lot of people credit him, and like he's kind of more humble about it. He's like, I don't think I'm responsible for like kicking off like a new era of literature for young adults. But the New York Times, Wall Street Journal credit him with ushering a new golden era for contemporary, realistic literary teen fiction, following more than a decade of dominance by books about young wizards, sparkly vampires, and dystopia.
Yeah, that's true.
And I thought that was pretty accurate. Yeah.
That sounds about right. Yeah. This is like a real story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when Theodore was talking about how he makes teenagers smart, that made me realize, I was like, okay, in what other books are teenagers smart? And it's always fantasy books. That's when they're like, they're kicking up that loot. They can play it all. They're not doing all the magic, and they're so smart. They're the smartest. But it is true. I wonder when we dumb down teenagers in literature, in terms of like realistic fiction, if that was like since like the Father Knows Best stuff. like as long as then, and if that's why J.D. Salinger is such a big deal, because he also made teenagers very smart. Every one of his books, teenagers are brilliant. So I'm curious. I want to know when that shifted, because even Alaska, when she was like teaching everyone else, was it geometry or chemistry or trigonometry, something smart that I was never good at, but it wasn't unrealistic for her to be a really smart whatever math whiz or biology whiz she was, because we all had friends who really got that stuff, and like, you know, whether it was ourselves or other people. But I did think he wrote their intelligence and their level of communication, what they're going to talk about, really, really well. The thing that was a little hard for me was when Pudge was with, what was his girlfriend's name? Laura. And they were going to like have their first sexual experience, and they didn't know what to do. So they went and asked Alaska what to do, and then they returned. I had a hard time with that because I feel like Pudge's ego was too big to go ask Alaska for directions on that situation. That was my issue, was it didn't fit with the character for me. It was almost too guileless, that I was like, this would be really sweet if this fit. But to me, it felt like his ego was way too large, like, and him posturing as a viable partner for Alaska was too big of a deal, that I had a hard time imagining that being a real scenario of him asking Alaska for like tips mid experience. I'm not getting too graphic because I don't know how old the people are that listen to this, but yeah.
Oh yeah. I read that as a kind of a subconscious, transferal of sexual energy. Like he's, going to Alaska.
He wants her involved.
Alaska's demonstrating what's going on.
Yeah.
And to me, that was very indicative of a sexual tension that they have. Hence, I think why Alaska also laughed so hysterically, and that being mentioned, it leads up, I think, to the point where they actually end up making out, and it kind of energy is released. I do like that read though as well. That it does seem kind of incorrect and false and awkward. And I think that is one of the things John Green wanted to get across with the sex scene, and why I think it's so absurd that so many people find this book to be like pornographic, when it just is very obviously anything but. This is like a funny, silly, but also like pushes the narrative into a certain, I think, direction and place. But I will say that this isn't something that I noticed as a kid. Of course, I actually remember reading that scene in class, and I was mortified. Oh my gosh, I like set down the book, and I was like, oh, I felt like so bad. I was like, what's going on? Like, it was terrible. But as an adult now, though, I think that I see certain motivations that maybe Pudge isn't even fully aware of.
I think you're right. I think it was about his connection to Alaska and finding a way to talk about it. It's just hard for me to imagine an awkward boy asking a hot girl, like very transparently showing that like you're inexperienced to this hot girl that you're always trying to impress. And that was like where I was like, okay, but I love your interpretation of that. I think it was a good device. It was a good device to show there's tension.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. On your note though, to respond to that statement, John Green posted on YouTube, and we'll link it, where he gives like this 4-minute like spiel about him not being a pornographer, and the video is a delight because people called him that because of this book. So he responds to it directly, and it's great. And he talks about how that scene was used to explain how awkward these coming of age moments are, and how tricky they are, and how complicated they are, and how we're talking about intimacy, but Miles didn't really understand intimacy, emotional intimacy at all.
I think John Green is like, every defense he's ever made in response to this book has been spot on, because I mean, it goes into, I think, teenage intelligence as well. Like he makes teenagers like actually feel like genuine people, and they behave in this way. I mean, it's so frustrating that the response to wanting appropriate kind of narratives about sex and, you know, for people to have healthy relationships with sex is to just cut it out entirely. We just won't talk about it. It just shouldn't be in books. Anybody who talks about it is a pornographer. I mean, it speaks to, I think, other people's own repressive kind of minds and behaviors and understandings of themselves and others. Because it's just absurd to me. It's one of the achievements of this book, again, I think is relating that sexual encounter to much, and physicality embodies to a much higher attainment of, you know, enlightenment, as Miles calls it, or his teacher calls it, whatever later goes on in the book.
Yeah.
Like it's a vital experience for everybody, not just Miles. It's vital for the teenagers who read it. You know what I mean?
I do think this book requires literacy that I don't know if a lot of the adults who are reading it alongside their child have necessarily. And I don't mean that to like slam adults, like parents and boomer culture, because it would have been boomer parents at that time when this book came out initially. Mm-hmm. But we do know that literacy rates are really low in our country. A lot of people just have not been taught how to critically think or how to read a book that talks about all of these different issues. And so I do think people are very afraid of it and very afraid that this is going to encourage their kids to just go buck wild, with no safety, no protection, you know, and and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know what we do to help parents and help people understand that having these conversations doesn't mean that it's going to push their kids to do things. It's just education. You know, I don't know if anyone has an answer to that.
I think it starts by having the read that Miles is not a good guy. Like, we shouldn't want to identify with him and what he does. You know, like, and I think that is the misreading that a lot of teenagers have. They read into the Miles character, they read into the Alaska character as this, you know, again, like the ideal teenager, like, I want to be friends with these people, I like these people. And while I think they're very relatable, you know, when you're a kid, I think the appropriate way to read this is to understand the shortcomings of Miles' thinking and the kind of ways that he interprets his own world. So you're right. This is a guided reading kind of on two ends, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think teens need to be directed as well, you know, because I think about what the book did to me when I was a kid, you know.
I think if I'd read it in high school, I would have been like, I want to be Alaska. I want to be Pudge. I wanted to be Natalie Portman. I wanted to be Margot Tenenbaum. You know, like these are not characters that are totally healthy. These are not people leading healthy, fulfilled life. You know, Margot's in love with her brother. Natalie Portman is simply just this device for Zach.
She's not a real person.
She's not even a person, really. And then, so it is interesting. Like, I do think a lot of us as teenagers, I think a lot of us
millennial math, we're still teenagers.
We do trade in a healthy, fulfilling self for this, like, on the surface romantic but very fun and very desirable character. I think a lot of us saw that, and the music didn't help. The music at the time because I mean, those are the people that were getting stuff done. They were getting results, whereas the healthy people, we weren't writing about them. I'd love a book about a healthy teenager, emotionally
it's like
healthy.
3 pages long.
Yeah.
It's just like,
then they graduated high school and they had great friends and they remained in contact with them. They knew how to build community with boundaries.
I recently started following this one Instagram profile called Those Media Moms. And they have PhDs on specifically about screen time for kids. But they just put something out called dialogic questioning. And they talked about what that looks like. Because the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that parents use media with their kids. And I would argue literature is media too for kids. And so dialogic questioning is an educational technique that was developed for reading and has been adapted to screen media. And it's just asking questions like who, what, when, where, why. Like, and it could be a discussion with your kids, like, oh, like we're watching Charlie Brown with my 3-year-old, and she started picking up the word stupid, and I'm like, oh no. So like every now and then, every time we hear like Lucy saying something really, or anyone saying anything terrible about Charlie Brown, because everyone has something terrible to say about Charlie Brown, poor kid.
Well, he wasn't just kidding. If he was cooler.
Lucy in the chat.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just like, oh, we'll just like shout from the other side of the room. It's like, oh, that didn't sound very nice. Do you think that made Charlie Brown feel good? You know, just to help Mabel think about, oh, those aren't nice words. My mom and dad are saying these aren't nice things.
Yeah.
A shout out to that one Instagram profile, because I think they're doing good work in that, of just like trying to bring in how to be media literate.
Yeah. And those are questions we should be asking ourselves as adults.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, it's something that doesn't stop with kids. I definitely like, you know, it's important to always kind of have those framing questions in your mind. I think it's very easy to fall into the, you know, romantics of prose, or, you know, of a character or of a certain situation. And yeah, you know, I think it's you end up becoming a lot more aware of kind of what you're engaging with when you can, you know, analyze it critically. Yeah, I think that's great.
Maybe we wouldn't have Tyler Durden as a hero for a lot of people from Fight Club. People are asking those questions. Maybe they wouldn't see him as who he should be, instead as he is actually the villain.
I also listened to a This American Life episode where I just forgot her name, Molly Ringwald, from
the John Hughes
fame, but she sits down and watches The Breakfast Club with her daughter. There was like a really special kind of sad moment where they finish watching the movie, they're recording like their conversation afterwards, and she asks her daughter, like, who do you identify with? And the daughter talked about the child who had like a lot of academic pressure put on them. It gets really emotional because like Molly Ringwald doesn't realize that she's putting academic pressure on her daughter, and like this is the character that her daughter identifies with. And like what a special moment for mother and child to like come together and be like, oh, let's talk about it if you're identifying with Holden Caulfield, my son.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To answer your question that you posed earlier, Nicole, like what is the answer to this? And I think it is just like parent and child working through it together. Just like, you know, I don't know why this author wrote it like this. Let's look it up together.
Yeah. It requires a lot of objectivity and a lot of time. And a lot of parents don't have that kind of time. So this is also why we do rely on schools to help children with this too. And if we're gonna make it harder for teachers to be able to teach this, we've hit a wall at that point. And I think that, because the best solution, I do agree, is to have the parent and the child read together or to talk about it with objectivity, with good faith that this book was written this way for a purpose, not just to indoctrinate a child into becoming a sexual heathen, you know, and getting to that point of having good faith about a book is also, I don't even know how to get to that journey, because that's where we're starting, which seems so backwards to me. We're starting so far back on the path of like where we really are thinking that these people are trying to brainwash. So if we can get past that, then we can get to the objective. Let's talk about this book as a book, as just a story. So I don't even know how to get onto the path of talking about it as a book. And I think maybe hopefully these type of like things will help, and podcasts will help, and more people just talking about it. But if we're already in that place of fear and terror, it's really hard. And I also think that, like, to bring it back to the book that we read, I think that Miles kind of also encapsulates this, and this might be a reach, but he also looks at things in that this is a tool, this, like, everything is a tool for him. He can't just look at like these last words as like that was just something that someone said, but everything is more important and has more weight than it might actually have. And I do think some books like Goosebumps guy, he just was like, no, I just write books for writing books. There's no point to them. Like, I don't write these to educate or to change people's lives. It's just a book. And I wish we could get to that place, but Miles can't get to that place. And I think a lot of us high schoolers, we're trying to find meaning out of so many things that would kind of make it our identity. I mean, even the end of the book that Theodore brought up earlier was like, he's focusing on Thomas Edison's last words, which are, it's very beautiful over there. And that's like somehow how he like reconciles her death. Like, he still can't just let it be. He still can't just let it be like she died and now he has to miss her. Like, that's not enough for him. He has to make it some romantic thing. And I do think that that trait carries on into these adulthood where we do think things are heavier or bigger or more calculated than they actually are. It's just life sometimes. This is just a book that John Green wrote. And he tried to tell the story the best he could. But I don't know how to get us to that point of just being okay that it's just a book,
Yeah, it's like art literacy too.
Oh,
it's not just like, it's just literacy across the board, I think.
I think so. And even the ending, like, I just wasn't satisfied with it because I didn't feel like he just learned that he was alone in his grief. Like, I was trying to figure out why I was like kind of annoyed by the ending when you first asked that question. And I just feel like he only realized that he was feeling his grief alone, but it didn't feel like he understood that it was about like that. I don't feel like he was still giving Alaska her dues of just being like, I miss her, my friend. It felt like he was still looking for his great perhaps in her death now. Like, he's now just romanticizing her death in this like thing, which is very
that's
teenage.
Actually a great word to bring up. Yeah, like the great perhaps is like his fatal flaw.
Yes.
And I think that looking at anything as, like you say, like a, kind of through this very like objective truths that Miles is always searching for, these kind of objective experiences like this, or these ultimates that Miles is kind of achieving to, like that is the flaw that a lot of us, I feel like, hold in our own lives, in our own way that we perceive, the things that are brought into our lives. And I think that it's a perfect read on what's going on in this last kind of closing few pages. There always needs to be this barrier between Miles and maybe the less spectacular
the
kind of emotions that he's dealing with. The mundane, and I think that's part of being a teenager. Yeah, sure. Maybe a little bit, but
100%. I would like to return to being a little bit more like Miles in my adulthood. I think I could sprinkle that in and not make it my identity, but sprinkle it in and enjoy, but yeah.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, he talks about that in this essay too. Like, teenagers are invincible, and we are. It's just kind of a silly, like jump into the air, But it is totally true. It is totally true. I mean, these kind of feelings kind of evade you. The older you get, the more death becomes realized and actualized. This is his first step in realizing. I think that he is thinking you're invincible is one of the first steps to realizing that you're not.
Yeah. Because it all falls apart. And then you get student loans, and then it's just the worst. And then you realize no one will save you.
No one will save you. Alaska's dead. Sorry.
Yeah, no one's gonna save you. Okay. Do we have any other thoughts? I want to let you go, Theodore, because we've kept you so long.
No, this has been great.
You're so articulate and so intelligent, and I just love talking to you. You really are one of my favorite people I think about, and then I see you on Instagram, I'm like, thank you.
No, this has been wonderful. I love the pod too. I'm a huge pod listener, so this is I feel very honored to be on this wonderful program you guys have, and just thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed this.
Before we log off,
wait, we also have to guess why it's banned.
Oh,
what's that?
We have to guess why it was banned, but I think it's pretty evident.
I think I'm an educated guess.
I think it's because of the sex scene and the language and the underage drinking, and probably the car accident and the smoking.
Possible suicide.
So the biggest challenges are because it is sexually explicit, and the second one has LGBTQIA plus content.
Oh.
Huh?
I don't remember that at all.
I don't remember that at all. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not even once. Wait.
Now
for real?
I feel...
What?
Okay. All right. So
no,
this
I'm
is
racking my brain. I don't remember a single.
So, according to a Florida news outlet in 2022, a school board challenged the book because they said there are thousands of parents with high standards who try everything they can to make sure that their kids don't have access to things that are encouraging them to go and have sex. It's just other things. And then, it's so funny because it's like, I don't remember anything within the... Yeah?
Takumi and Pudge were like jokingly in the shower at one point, but it was like they were both fully clothed, and like
I know
the colonel made a tiny joke. But
someone would have had to do a close read of that book, and I don't think that school board member was doing a close read.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very confusing. That's very confusing.
That's wild. Yeah, okay, what do you want to plug, Theodore?
Yeah, people can find me, my work on my website, theodore-wilkins.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at DJ_sees the means. But yeah, all my stuff is there, and yeah, come chat, come hang out, come
be friends. And I'm just going to plug Theodore's writing. I've only read a little bit of your stuff. I think it was it published in a zine? I don't know or did you make the zine? I don't know.
Yeah, I was running a zine for a little bit, and yeah.
You published a piece about your evolution with love.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, that was in a wonderful magazine called Ouch, I think is, they're actually run out of New York. They do great stuff. There are 12 issues coming out shortly. So go check out Ouch, everyone.
Well, it was a beautiful piece. So
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Oh my gosh. No, seriously, I want to read more. More. I know that that pressure doesn't help, but
no, thank you.
But I do love your reading your writing. Okay, Eden, anything else?
Nothing else. Thank you so much for your time, Theodore.
Yes, thank you.
Burn This Book is produced by us, Nicola Corin and Eden Wen.
Music by myself, Nicole, and performed by my dad, Frank.